They said her hair was a curse. They mocked her, avoided her, and blamed her for every misfortune in the village. But when sickness came and the river rose to swallow them all, the same hair they feared became the only thing standing between life and death. The day Amara's hair turned green, her mother wept into her wrapper for 3 days. It started the morning after her 10th birthday. Thin strands that had been black as midnight suddenly sprouted thick as climbing vines, the color of new leaves after rain. By sunset, her hair had grown past her waist, smelling of bitter herbs and wet earth. Impossible to cut no matter how sharp the blade. Abomination, the medicine woman whispered when Amara's mother brought her to the compound. The old woman wouldn't even look at the child, just waved her bony fingers towards the door. That thing growing from her head, it is not of this world. The word spread through the village of Umuna like wildfire through dry grass. Amara learned to walk with her head down, her strange hair coiled and hidden beneath old cloth that could barely contain it. The hair seemed alive, always growing, always moving slightly even when there was no wind. At night, she could feel it pulsing against her scalp, warm and insistent, like a second heartbeat. The other children were cruel in the way children can be when they smell difference. Snakehead, snakehead, they chanted whenever she passed. Your hair will strangle you in your sleep. Adana, who had once been her closest friend, now crossed to the other side of the path when she saw Amara and said, My mother says I cannot play with cursed children. She says your hair will bring bad luck to our family. The worst part wasn't the names, it was the fear in everyone's eyes. The way mothers pulled their children closer when she walked by, the way the elders stopped talking when she entered the market, the way her own father couldn't quite meet her gaze across the evening fire. During the festival of New Yams, when the whole village gathered to celebrate the harvest with dancing and drums, Amara stood at the edge of her compound and watched the distant firelight. Her mother had forbidden her from going. It's for your own protection, her mother said, but her voice cracked. The villagers, they blame every misfortune on you now. Last week, Okonko's goat died, and he swears it happened after you walked past his compound. Amara touched her hair, now so long it reached her knees, thick as rope, emanating that constant smell of herbs that made people wrinkle their noses. Sometimes, in the quiet of night, she swore she could hear it whispering to her in a language she almost understood. Why me, Mama? She asked, tears streaming down her 13-year-old face. What did I do to deserve this curse? Her mother had no answer. Nobody did. 3 years passed like this. 3 years of isolation, of whispers, of being the village's living ghost, seen but never acknowledged, present but never included. Amara grew quiet, her voice becoming as hidden as her hair beneath its wrappings. She spent her days helping her mother with chores, fetching water from the river before no one else was awake, returning home before the village stirred. She became a shadow, hoping that if she was small enough, silent enough, maybe they would forget why they hated her. But the village never forgot. But subscribe now, because what happens next will shake everything you thought you knew about curses and blessings. It began with Chief Okafor's youngest son. The boy woke screaming, his body burning with fever so intense his mother thought he would melt like palm oil in the sun. By evening, 3 more children had fallen ill. By the next morning, half the village was sick. The illness moved like an invisible spirit through Umuna, touching young and old, strong and weak. People collapsed in their compounds, their bodies shaking with chills despite the heat, their skin turning grey as ash. The smell of sickness hung over the village like smoke that wouldn't clear. Amara watched from her doorway as her neighbors carried their sick to the medicine woman's compound. She heard the desperate prayers, the slaughtering of chickens for sacrifice, the crying of mothers who couldn't bear to see their children suffer. The gods are angry, the elders declared. They pointed at Amara's compound. Perhaps we have let an evil live among us too long. Her father stood at their gate, his machete in hand, facing down a group of angry villagers. You will not touch my daughter, he said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. Whatever cause you think she carries, she has done nothing to harm anyone. That night, Amara couldn't sleep. Her hair seemed more restless than usual, pulling at her scalp, that herbal scent growing stronger until it filled the entire room. She could hear the sounds of suffering from nearby compounds, the moaning, the crying, the desperate prayers. Please, she whispered to whatever force had caused her. If my hair brings misfortune, take it. Take me, but leave them alone. The next day, something strange happened. Little Chisom, the daughter of Amara's neighbor, had wandered from her compound in a fever dream. She stumbled into Amara's path as the girl was returning from the river. Before Amara could move away, Chisom fell, grabbing onto Amara's wrapper, her small fingers tangling in the green hair that had come loose. Amara froze, expecting the child to scream, to pull away in horror like everyone else did. But Chisom just held on, her fevered body going still. And then Amara felt it, a warmth flowing from her scalp, down through her hair, into the child's trembling hands. The scent of herbs grew overwhelming, different notes emerging, bitter leaf for fever, utazi for strength, unku for healing. When Chisom's mother found them minutes later, the child was sitting up, clear-eyed and smiling, her fever completely gone. Miracle, the woman breathed. The gods have healed my daughter. But as she scooped up Chisom and hurried away, Amara noticed something. Green strands clung to Chisom's fingers, and wherever those strands touched Chisom's skin, the girl's greyish color had returned to healthy brown. Amara said nothing. Who would believe her? Who would listen? Yet, over the next few days, a pattern emerged. People who had accidentally brushed against Amara, the water bearer who bumped into her at the river, the child who grabbed her wrapper in the market, they recovered. Not immediately, but faster than others, much faster. The medicine woman tried everything. She burnt herbs, she made sacrifices, she called upon every spirit she knew. Nothing worked. The sickness spread, taking the chief's son, then 2 elders, then the blacksmith's wife. The village was dying and nobody knew why. One evening, Amara's own mother fell ill. She burned with that terrible fever, her breathing shallow and strained. Amara's father looked at his daughter with desperate eyes. Please, he said, his pride breaking, if there's anything at all. Amara unwrapped her hair for the first time in years. It fell around her mother like a green waterfall. That herbal scent filling the room so strongly, it made her father's eyes water. She laid her hair across her mother's chest, across her arms, wrapping it gently around her fevered body. All night she sat there, feeling that strange warmth flowing through her, feeling her hair pulse and move as if it were breathing healing into her mother's lungs. By morning, her mother's fever had broken. Her father stared, unable to speak. In that moment, Amara saw his expression change, from desperate hope to something else, understanding perhaps, or fear of a different kind, the fear that comes from realizing you've been wrong about something fundamental. Your hair, he whispered, it's not a curse, is it? Before Amara could answer, screams erupted outside. The river was rising. The rains had been falling for 2 days, but nobody had been paying attention. They were too focused on the sickness, on their dying loved ones, on their desperate prayers. Now, the river that had always been Umuna's blessing was becoming its destruction. Amara rushed outside to see people running, children screaming, the sound of rushing water growing louder by the second. The river had broken its banks, and a wall of brown water was surging toward the village, swallowing everything in its path. Get to high ground, Chief Okafor shouted, but he was weak from his own recent illness, his voice barely carrying over the chaos. Everyone to the hill! But the hill was on the other side of the river, and the bridge, the old wooden bridge that connected both halves of the village, was already underwater, its planks breaking apart like dry leaves in the current. Families on the far side were trapped. Amara could see them, mothers clutching babies, elderly people unable to run, sick people who couldn't even stand. The water was rising fast, already reaching the first compounds, flooding homes and sweeping away everything that wasn't tied down. We have to help them, someone screamed. How? The bridge is gone. The water is too strong to cross. Amara stood frozen, watching the disaster unfold. Her hair, unleashed from its wrapping in the chaos, whipped around her in the wind, reacting to her fear, to the crisis, growing longer, thicker, as if feeding on the urgency of the moment. An old woman named Mama Ngozi, one of the few who had never openly mocked Amara, was trapped on the far side with her grandchildren. Amara could see her, trying to lift a small child, could see the water rising around her knees, could hear her desperate cries. Please, someone help us, the children! Nobody could reach them. The current was too fast, too violent. Even the strongest swimmers would be swept away. Amara felt something inside her break. A decision made itself. She had spent years hiding, years shrinking herself, years believing what the village had told her, that she was cursed, that her difference was a burden, that she should be ashamed. But her mother lived because of her hair. Little Chisom lived. Others had recovered after touching her. What if they were all wrong? What if the villagers had been mocking the very thing meant to save them? Her father saw her move. Amara, no! But she was already running toward the river's edge, her hair flowing behind her like a green waterfall, growing longer with each step, responding to her determination, to her purpose. She reached the bank where the water raged most violently. People were shouting at her, calling her crazy, but their voices seemed distant. All she could hear was Mama Ngozi's cries, the children screaming, the sound of homes being destroyed. "Hold this," she shouted to her father, pushing one end of her hair into his trembling hands. He took it, too shocked to refuse. Then Amara did something that made everyone stop and stare. She threw the other end of her hair across the raging river. It sailed through the air, impossibly far, impossibly strong, like a green rope cast by spirits. It stretched and stretched, growing as it flew until it reached the far bank and wrapped itself around a strong palm tree. Her hair had become a bridge, a living bridge across the deadly waters. "No," someone whispered. "It's not possible." But it was real. Her hair stretched across the river, thick as a ship's rope, unbreakable, pulsing with that same warm energy she'd felt when healing her mother. Mama Ngozi stared at the impossible bridge, then at Amara standing on the near bank, her scalp surely screaming with the weight and pull of what she'd created. "Come across!" Amara shouted, her voice clear and strong for the first time in years. But would it? Mama Ngozi hesitated at the water's edge, her grandchildren clutching her wrapper, their eyes wide with terror. "Trust me," Amara called across the raging water. Every muscle in her body was screaming, her scalp burning where her hair pulled impossibly tight, stretching across the river like a rope woven by the gods themselves. "Please!" The old woman met Amara's eyes, and in that moment, something passed between them. A recognition, an understanding that sometimes the thing you fear most is the thing that will save you. Mama Ngozi grabbed the green rope of hair with both hands. It was warm to the touch, almost vibrating with life, that herbal scent so strong it cut through even the smell of floodwater and fear. She stepped onto the living bridge. The village held its breath. Mama Ngozi moved slowly, hand over hand, her feet finding purchase on the thick strands. The hair held. Not just held, it seemed to adjust beneath her weight, to strengthen, to support her as if it understood its purpose. Behind her, one of the grandchildren followed, then another. "It's working," someone whispered. "By the ancestors, it's actually working." Amara's father had wrapped her hair around his own waist, bracing himself against a tree, becoming an anchor point. Other men saw this and rushed to help, though they hesitated to touch the green strands they'd called cursed for so long. "Help me!" Amara's father commanded. "My daughter is saving your families. The least you can do is hold the rope." Shame made them move. They grabbed hold of Amara's hair, feeling its impossible strength, its warmth, the way it seemed alive in their hands. One by one, people crossed from the flooded side, young mothers with babies tied to their backs, elderly men too weak to swim, children too small to fight the current, all of them clinging to the green bridge they had mocked, trusting their lives to the girl they had called cursed. Amara felt each person's weight, each person's fear, each person's desperate hope. Her body shook with the strain, sweat pouring down her face, her vision blurring with pain and exhaustion. But she held on. She held on because finally she understood why she had been different all along. "The last group is coming," someone shouted. But Amara's strength was fading. Her legs trembled. Her hands were numb where they gripped her own hair. Her scalp felt like it was on fire. How much longer could she hold? Then she felt hands on her shoulders. Her mother, recovered from her sickness, stood beside her. "I have you, my daughter. We all have you." And they did. The village, the same people who had shunned her, who had called her cursed, who had forbidden her from their celebrations, they surrounded her now, supporting her, holding her steady, becoming part of the human chain that made her impossible bridge possible. The last family reached the safe side just as Amara's legs gave out. She collapsed, and the bridge of hair came loose from the tree on the far side, whipping back across the water. But everyone was safe. Every single person had crossed. People were crying, laughing, embracing their families. The water continued to rage, but it no longer mattered. Everyone was on high ground now. Everyone had survived. Amara lay on the ground, barely conscious, her hair spread around her like a green pool. People approached slowly, reverently, as if seeing her for the first time. "She saved us," Chief Okafor said, his voice breaking. "The girl we called cursed. She saved every single one of us." But then someone screamed,
The injured! People are hurt from the flood, cuts, broken bones. We have no medicine woman, and Mama Ngozi stepped forward, still breathing hard from her crossing. She knelt beside Amara and gently lifted a strand of the green hair. We have medicine, she said quietly. We've had it all along. We were just too blind to see it. What happened next would change everything.
Throughout the night, as the floodwaters slowly receded, Amara's hair performed its final miracle. The injured were brought to where she lay, still exhausted from holding the bridge. At first, people were afraid to touch her. Years of fear don't disappear in a moment. But Mama Mbozi showed them, wrapping a strand of the green hair around a child's arm that had been broken in the flood. Within minutes, the swelling went down. Within an hour, the child could move his fingers without crying. Word spread quickly. A man with a deep gash on his leg found that when Amara's hair was laid across the wound, it stopped bleeding and began to close. An elderly woman who had nearly drowned felt strength return to her body when the hair was wrapped around her chest. Even though still suffering from the sickness, the fever that had started everything, they recovered when they finally allowed themselves to touch what they had feared. Amara drifted in and out of consciousness, but each time she woke, she saw more people. Not mocking her, not running from her, but kneeling beside her, tears in their eyes, asking forgiveness with their silence. By morning, when the sun broke through the clouds, the medicine woman arrived at Amara's side. She was ancient, bent with age, but her eyes were clear as she looked at the girl and her miraculous hair. "I was wrong," the old woman said simply, "and I am sorry." She turned to face the gathered crowd. It seemed the entire village had come. Chief Okafor stepped forward, leaning on his staff, but standing as tall as his recovered body would allow. "Amara, daughter of Umuna, I speak for the entire village when we say we have wronged you. We saw difference and called it evil. We saw a gift and called it a curse." His voice cracked. "You had every reason to let us drown, to let us die of sickness, to watch us suffer as we made you suffer. But you saved us, all of us." Amara sat up slowly, her father and mother supporting her. She looked at the faces around her, faces that had turned away from her for years. Some were crying, others couldn't meet her eyes, shame written across their features. "I didn't save you for forgiveness," Amara said quietly. "I saved you because it was the right thing to do. Because no one should suffer when I have the power to help." The silence that followed her words was thick with emotion. Then, little Chisom pushed through the crowd, the first child who had been healed, and wrapped her small arms around Amara's neck and whispered, Thank you for your beautiful hair. Beautiful. Not cursed, not strange, beautiful." Other children followed, then their parents, then the elders. One by one, they came to Amara, some touching her head gently, others just standing close, all of them acknowledging what they had failed to see for so long. In the weeks that followed, Omona rebuilt, but it wasn't just the homes and compounds that were restored, it was the village's heart. Amara's compound became a place of healing. People came when they were sick, when they were hurt, when they needed hope. Her hair, still long, still green, still smelling of earth and herbs, was no longer hidden beneath wrappings, but worn openly, proudly, a symbol of the village's shame and redemption. The elders declared that every year, on the anniversary of the flood, the village would hold a festival not of harvest or war, but of understanding. A reminder that what seems different, what seems strange, might be exactly what you need to survive. Amara learned to forgive, though forgetting was harder. Some scars on the heart take longer to heal than wounds on the body. But she found peace in her purpose, strength in what was once her source of shame. Years later, when other villages heard the tale of the girl with the green hair who saved Umuna, they would ask if it was true. And the people of Umuna would say yes, it was true, every word. But more importantly, they would say it taught them the most valuable lesson they had ever learnt. That the thing you mock, the person you reject, the difference you fear, that might be exactly what the ancestors sent to save you. That curses and blessings sometimes wear the same face, and wisdom lies in knowing which is which. That we often destroy what we don't understand, only to discover too late that we needed it all along. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you to look beyond the surface and see the gifts in what seems strange, then subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Because sometimes the stories that heal us are the ones that challenge what we thought we knew. Hit that subscribe button and let's continue this journey through the wisdom of our ancestors together. Until the next story, remember,
Never mock what you don't understand. It might just be the blessing you've been praying for.